So what's more important, the audience you're targeting or the strength of your content?
You know, Brian, I know you want me to have one answer, but I'm going to tell you that it's really how they work together. So if you have the right audience but the wrong message, it really doesn't matter.
From the Aishin Broadcast Studio, it's the Executive Spotlight.
Welcome to the AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today our guest is Kristen Lembeck from Spectrum Reach. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you in the studio. What do you think?
It's really, really impressive. I got the whole tour, thanks, and met a bunch of the team, and can't believe how much you guys really put into this. And I'm sure that the content we're going to get here today is a reflection of how awesome the studio is and all the space.
Cool. Let's dive in. We're going to talk about a topic that nobody's talking about right now, AI.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, nobody's talking about that. How is AI, impacting how dealerships are doing their advertising?
I joke all the time that AI is the new term digital, which means it's absolutely everything. You know, my refrigerator is digital, and that's so true of AI, because I think for a dealer, AI can mean everything. It can touch every aspect of their operation. But at Spectrum Reach, being that we're in the advertising, media, and marketing space, there's two areas that we really see and talk about a lot with dealers. The first is creative. And in the creative space, we have a partnership with an organization called Waymark, and they're an AI-driven startup company that produces video. So what that enables a dealer to do is get, in just 5 minutes, a totally custom spot that costs nothing potentially, and can be developed on their timeline. And that's not to say that professionally produced content is not valuable, because it's incredibly valuable. Often the segments that you have cut make the best AI-generated content. But what you're able to do is tell the story in different ways and cut it up and make that very custom to an audience or a time or an incentive. So that's one way. It really puts the dealer in the driver's seat, if you will, for driving their creative. And then the other area is around data and targeting as it relates to media planning. And this we're really excited about, but the flip side of that excitement is that it comes with kind of some serious stuff, because data is really important to us in terms of being privacy focused. We want to ensure that all of the rich data that we sit on as an organization is protected, both for our customers and for anyone that we partner with. So we always approach data with a privacy focus, and we always make sure that data is aggregated and de-identified. So in plain speak, what that means is, I know that you're Brian and you're sitting here, but when we're targeting you for media, Brian is one of many that sits in a certain area, and we don't know specifically who that is, but we know that you're the right person to target. So all that disclosure aside, what we're excited about with AI is that we've built some tools that take all that data that we sit on top of, and in just a few clicks can get you to a media schedule that picks the right people in the right place on the right platforms without toiling over how to get to that. And all of these things introduce speed and efficiency to the dealer that didn't exist even a year ago.
Well, you mentioned, audience targeting, you mentioned content.
Yep.
Talk to me about the relationship between audience targeting and strong content.
Yeah, there is no stronger relationship to us, because you can have the greatest targeting in the world, and if your message doesn't land, it is meaningless. And the inverse is true as well, right? You can have the perfect target audience, and it's just hitting with the wrong message. And you think about your own home, my husband and myself, think about your algorithms. Both of ours, we are served completely different things because what interests us is totally different. We're the same household. And when we think about car buying decisions, that's a joint household decision. But the way you'd reach me with creative, if you've decided that I am the person who's ultimately going to make that purchase decision, is going to be different than my husband. So really, the other thing that we see with dealers is it's about differentiation. Also has to be about frequency. So it's a busy space, And so you have to make sure that that message is showing up with enough frequency to really break through. And then the last thing is localization. People want to know that it's convenient. So whether that be physically getting to a dealership close by or knowing that there's an option to bring the car to you or whatever that convenience factor is.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't had a lot of guests bring up the difference between a husband and a wife and the type of content that they're going to be served by the algorithm.
Right.
Even though it is a joint decision. I've not heard that before. That's very interesting. Let's talk about success.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to know their marketing's working. How do dealers know it's working? How do they measure it? What does success look like? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. And I've listened to enough and watched enough of the content that you produce to know that my answer is going to be very consistent with a lot of the folks that you talk to, which is in our world, the dealer's goals are our goals. And so, like so many people have said before on this show or others, that really partnership looks like you shouldn't have to change what business outcomes you're looking for as a dealer to make the media work. And so that's what we're always looking for is how do we ensure that whatever that is, if that is efficiency, if that is market share growth, that we can deliver against that. But market share growth is one of the things that we're regularly looking at. And we find that it's a great indicator of whether or not something that is hard to measure is moving the needle. And the other thing that we find that does is it's kind of a equalizer for marketplace dynamics. So up markets, down markets, in automotive you see it all, and you ride those waves. But when you're keeping an eye on your local market share, could be against your brand, could be against a geography, whatever that is, that's really what we often find that we partner with our dealers on. But at the end of the day, what we try to do is make something very complex, the marketing mix. What's working, we try to make it more clear. So if we can make the complex clear, then we're doing our job. And really what we want to do is take that off of the dealer's plate so that they can focus on selling cars.
Yeah. Well, it is more complex if you think about how all of it works, but the fact that you don't have to actually you don't have to pull all the levers anymore.
Right.
In the old days, we'd say, we want to sell pickup trucks. Let's put it on the baseball game.
Right.
Right. And then we'd pray that we sold some pickup trucks. But now it really doesn't matter what your customer's watching. It just matters that they are watching, and you're going to find them wherever they are.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to find them. It's going to do it for you, right?
That's right. And you bring up sports. It's a good example. There is still such an important place for sports in a media mix because of the live viewership. And frankly, there's no better place for broad reach in a marketplace. So if you have a message that is going to land with a broad demographic, that can be the best place for you to be. One of the things that we think is so important, though, is let the data lead the way. And that's why we're so excited about all of the data that we can aggregate for dealers, or people like us that sit on a lot of data can aggregate for dealers, because we can bring those insights and then guide that decision driven by something more than gut.
So let's talk about seamless entertainment. I've heard you use that term before, and I don't know what it means. So tell us what it is, how it works, and how it can help.
I'd love to. We are so excited about seamless entertainment. And I've mentioned here before that we as an organization are about making complex things more simple. So we want to know, is it simple and does it work on the advertising side? But think about just us as consumers. The world of watching television has gotten pretty complex. And so seamless entertainment is about making that just a lot easier for our residential customers. But it is Spectrum's video offering. And what it does is takes the great offerings you've probably already known if you live somewhere that has Spectrum. So you can get your cable and internet, but now included in that are different apps that you might have had on a separate subscription. So now you're including Peacocks and Paramount Plus, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Hulu, that bundle, and many more. So I don't have the whole list memorized, and the list continues to grow. But for our customers, that means more than $126 in value on other apps. That's huge. And it also just makes your life easier with a single subscription. On the advertising side, there's a lot of connections there, because we're also trying to take a very fragmented viewership experience And how do we think about buying that when you have to engage on different platforms and know all about them? And by bringing this really all together, what we're able to do for our partners is look across all of the different platforms, just find the right audience, and now being able to deliver wherever they are and however they're watching.
Wow. So you can kind of follow the customer that you want to reach across all of those platforms.
100%.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You keep bringing up data and data sets and large data sets and what you can learn from them. What are some of the insights that you guys are able to get by synthesizing these large data sets that you have access to?
You have as much data as Spectrum Reach has, and we can look at all of the first-party data that we have. So that means viewership, what are people watching, what platforms are they using? We can look at all of that, and that starts to get you where are people. So where do you need to be? Then we can layer that with different data sets. So buying behaviors, car purchases, and that helps us get to a really targeted audience. And when you can couple where are people watching and what is their intent to buy and how do I make sure that I'm showing up in the right place, that's where dealers can get even more efficiencies for their dollars and for their marketing investment than they ever have before. And we hear that so much, marketing investments, marketing budgets aren't getting bigger necessarily. Everyone's trying to do more with a little less. And we are really working hard to make sure that we can make that happen. And we have some really good case studies of where that has happened for dealers.
Well, you don't have to name the name of a dealership, but
Sure.
maybe just kind of walk me down the path of a dealership that you've worked with that has really achieved some success, and kind of tell us about that.
Yeah, we definitely have several. I would love to highlight one that's pretty connected to, hey, can we be more efficient? And it's a multi-rooftop dealer in Texas. And they happen to have the same brand, one rooftop in San Antonio and one in Austin. So selling the same cars, similar-ish market size. And what we did with them was said, hey, what if we took one city and built a media plan the way you traditionally have? And a big part of that was gut and what we think people are watching and what's the big game. And then for the other market, we said, let us use all of our data and put a schedule together. Let's see what happens. And so when that campaign was over and we went back to measure website conversions in that example, what we saw was greater than 300% increase in website traffic converting from the campaign that we delivered. So those are examples, and what we get excited about is when it works, when we can see the business outcomes for the dealer, and that's what we saw when we really applied our data.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that makes sense. If you look how many different aspects in a dealership have changed, people used to go to the auction and buy the cars their gut told them were going to sell, and
Right.
nobody would dream of doing that today. They're going to use data.
Exactly.
People used to just, pick a number out of thin air of what they were going to, price a vehicle at and try to guess how long it might take to sell it. No one would ever dream of doing that now.
That's right.
And so using your gut to do marketing, which is way more complex than it's ever been. I mean, we're not choosing television, newspaper, and radio anymore. We've got a lot of options. And to think that you could use your gut for that, I'm surprised. I'm not surprised that you guys really knocked that one out of the park.
Right. But it's still hard. There's still a lot of platforms. And so our ability to really bring together multiple platforms to endeavor to make it easier for people is what we're striving to do.
Nice. Yeah. Well, Kristen, is there anything more you'd like to share with our audience today before we go?
I think I'd love to share one more example, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we love to tout the success of our partners, because their success is our success. And in one of those, I shared this example of using our data in kind of an A/B test. We have another awesome example out of Wisconsin, and a dealer, I can share the name on this one. So this one is Menke GMC Mazda. They partnered with us, used our data to build media campaigns. And when they did, within 2.5 years, they were the #1 dealer in the whole DMA. So it's pretty amazing what can happen when we can tap the power of the media planning tools that we have.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for taking the time to join us for this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today, our guest has been Kristen Lundbeck from Spectrum Reach. We hope to see you again on a future episode. This one's Over the Curb and Burning Gas.